we're delighted to have Steve Mogaka, constitutional lawyer. Thank you so much for finding time. Now, that story, the National Assembly adjourning indefinitely after failing to agree on the composition of the House Business Committee. From where you are, what are you seeing? What are the implications? How do you interpret such a move?
Thank you so much, and good evening, viewers. Plainly put, Parliament went on a suicide mission because in the absence of the House Business Committee, it therefore means that the Assembly cannot transact. And sadly, if we were to go strictly by the law, Article 47, rather Standing Order number 49, disallows representation of a similar motion to the House, therefore meaning that the House is literally chained and cannot constitute the House Business Committee. And therefore the implication is, as some would say, is that Parliament has committed suicide. And having committed suicide, what remains is the pathological exercise of pronouncing it clinically dead. And therefore, perhaps Kenyans decide what to do at this tail end of Parliament.
At this tail end of Parliament?
Yes.
You talk about the Parliament putting a rope on its neck. And to preempt the possibility of detonation, what then can be done? Because there is the option of, voters using the recall cause. There is the option of somebody moving to court, to petition the court to have Parliament dissolved. So what are we seeing going forward?
Going forward, this country is sometimes known best for impunity. Parliament can decide if they come to their senses, because I don't think they were aware of the ramifications of the decisions they were taking today. They may have been thinking they are playing politics, but a failure to constitute a House Business Committee literally says that there's a shutdown of the legislature. And therefore, to preempt whatever action, and I do urge that if there are serious public interest litigators in this country, and I think I'll take up one such case very quickly, one needs to move a court to pronounce Parliament literally dissolved by its own actions. And if that doesn't happen, because for the public to really understand what has happened, it means that Parliament now cannot pass any law. Yet one of the core business of Parliament is legislation. It therefore means that Parliament cannot oversight the executive or judiciary. Therefore meaning we can have a rogue executive doing its own things, hakuna mahali butawapeleka. It therefore means that as citizens who exercised our right to elect parliamentarians, they have literally abdicated or removed themselves from the position of representing us as citizens and voters. And therefore, once they have stripped themselves of those three key responsibilities on their own motion, it therefore means that what we require is the court to go through the judicial pathological process of pronouncing Parliament clinically dead, and therefore tell Kenyans or the president to call for a snap election to have other legislators called in.
Are we seeing the worlds moving, the political worlds, because we are heading also towards a general election, and some might interpret this as an extension of, the cracks that are beginning to emerge among the political class. So are we seeing the political wars being pushed into the legislative agenda and therefore putting wananchi at risk?
Oh, certainly, because what has happened today is really what you call a reflection of the squabbles, political squabbles and formations that are happening for 2022. And if we are serious legislators in this country, they must know that whatever formations that are going now are for post-August 2022. They are not for now.
2022.
All our parliamentarians took oath of office, requiring them to operate according to the Constitution, to defend the Constitution and observe the standing orders. Yeah.
So what does Parliament have to do? Because it has a role to forestall a potential crisis.
Precisely. Parliament now, because these formations that have caused today's quagmire, technically says that the leader of majority in Parliament is actually a leader of no majority. Because if you were a leader of majority, then formation of a House Business Committee is no big deal. And it is not far from the truth, because Jubilee that this country elected to government is not the Jubilee we see today. There are defectors sitting in the name of Jubilee, but whose loyalties are elsewhere. And this plays out because sometimes in Kenya, we condone a lot of indiscipline and lawlessness and stretch this too far. Because according to the Political Parties Act, if your loyalty to the political party that sponsored you to Parliament ceases, you exit. Yeah? And the disaster that happened in Parliament today is there are people sitting elected through various political parties, but their loyalties are not there. Yeah? And they are pretentiously sitting there and going to exercise the sabotage they did in Parliament today because they say, Utadu, yeah? Because, I mean, there is no observance of law. And really, our Parliament needs to be tamed because they cannot be the ones legislating and not observing the law. Yeah? And that is why I am like, if a petitioner went to court today, yeah, and listed some of those MPs who have no loyalty to the parties that sponsored them to Parliament.
What would be the likely outcome?
It will be a trigger to the political parties that elected them to actually activate the process of expulsion. Yeah, because they need to be expelled, that is one. And the voters who voted for these parliamentarians on the various tickets or political parties need to also activate the recall clause because you cannot be an MP when you have chosen that you are not representing the people who elected you, when you have chosen to, you know, strangulate the mechanism through which you can legislate, when you have chosen that therefore you are not going to conduct the oversight role that you were elected to. I mean really, this is why I say they have committed suicide, and all we require is the processes provided by the law to put the wreaths and RIP on them and say it was nice when you were here.
And in addition to that, I mean, look at it from this angle. We also have the budget. And, you know, obviously elections is a legislative agenda. So what are the risks?
The risks are that, and this is perhaps where the devil resides. By doing what they have done, obviously they have sabotaged the budget process that was going to lead us to a budget provision for 2022-2023. And it is within that budget estimate that the budget for election is supposed to be provided for. So essentially, by doing what they have done, they are literally giving Kenyans notice that they shall not be present to conduct the budget process, and therefore you can go to hell. IEBC will not have money for elections, and therefore there is no election in Kenya. That is how dangerous this action is, and it is therefore up to Kenyans to say whether they can condone and countenance this kind of conduct, or they'll take steps to do that they have to do. But mark my words that nature and the law abhors a vacuum. And what I'm saying is that because the government under the Financial Management Act that we have in this country provides that government can spend up to a certain proportion of the budget estimate pending legislation.
Pending legislation.
Yes, but for us to get there is really bad for the country, and all we are saying in a word is that the conduct by our legislators is extremely reckless.
So you've pointed out a petitioner moving to court. You've also pointed out the voter taking advantage of the recall clause.
Yes.
As you wrap up, other than those two mitigation measures you've mentioned, is there an internal arrangement within Parliament itself that can cure this potential problem?
Yes, they have a self-saving mechanism because they are the makers and amenders of standing orders. As the standing order number 49 stands today, they cannot present a similar motion to Parliament. But being who they are, and they have the legislative, unlimited legislative powers, they can save their face by bringing an amendment to standing order number 49 to permit a premature presentation of a similar motion, either with the same names or with different names. And we wish them luck, because a serious activist can again go to court and stop them on their tracks, because they are bound by their standing orders, and if they acted recklessly, then they should bite the bullet.
I think that's a good place to stop it. Thank you so much, Steve Mogaka, for coming through. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, the day's business, and later on, we're going to look at the day's sports as well. Stay with us.